Hey guys, welcome back to the Football Diary podcast, and it's an England squad announcement special today. And we've got news already of the 33-man provisional squad that Gareth Southgate's released. So he's got to trim that down to 26 people, as we know. And I'm joined by Myles and Dave today, and we're going to be going through who we think should make the cut, anyone who's unlucky to miss out, and just open it up to you guys and what you think. So how are you doing, first of all, guys? Good to see you.
Hey, mate, you're right.
Yeah, pretty good. So England squad's been announced, the provisional 33-man. There's 4 debutants, potentially. There's 4 uncapped players in there. So, yeah, there's a bit to pick through. First impressions, then. I'm going to go through the squad bit by bit. So we'll start with the goalkeepers and the defenders. And I'll just open it up to you guys to sort of say who you think might be at danger of missing out, who's lucky to be on the list, if anybody, and just try and figure out who you think there should be on the plane. On the plane? Did we say on the plane? Are they going anywhere? It's a weird one, isn't it?
A big party bus this time, I reckon.
The big party bus, yeah, we'll stick with that. So we've got 4 goalkeepers on the list. Obviously, Jordan Pickford. Nick Pope's missed out this time through injury. So Pickford, Ramsdale, Johnston, and obviously Dean Henderson as well. So 4 goalkeepers. I'm guessing he's going to stick with 3. So we'll figure out who misses that cut. In defence, he's taking Alexander-Arnold potentially. He's got Chilwell, Cody, Godfrey is the one of the uncapped players. Reece James, Harry Maguire, Tyrone Mings, Luke Shaw, John Stones, Kieran Trippier, Kyle Walker, and Ben White from Brighton and Hove Albion. So there's a couple of players there that aren't capped but have had brilliant seasons, let's face it. And there's a lot of right backs in there to whittle down. So I'll start with you first of all, Myles, because you've come decked out for the occasion like me in the England spirit. What do you make of the defensive lineup there, and who do you think is potentially going to miss the cut? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm still rocking the 2018 England shirt until I know what Grealish's squad number is this summer. So I think the goalkeepers is fairly obvious. Ramsdale won't go. I think it's mad that he's even in contention, to be honest, after the season Sheffield United have had. He ended the season quite well. I think the last month he had some good performances, but he started it shockingly. So yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. Johnston is a good keeper. I saw him at Villa, obviously, for a while, and he was great. He's done well with what he had at West Brom, but he's fortunate to be in there just on Pope's injury. But he'll go, and that'll be really good for him. I think well-deserved. And then you get to the defenders. It's tough because obviously you're relying on Maguire being fit in terms of whether he goes or not. I saw that he missed training for United for the final, so it looks like he won't play tonight. So that one's the big question mark. But if you think he's going to be anywhere near fit or even fit by the end of the group, you still take him, I think. I think it's probably worth it with Maguire. So that takes up a place, but it means you have to kind of consider your options at centre-back a little bit more. So I get why White and Godfrey are getting called up in terms of getting new blood in there and some depth. I don't get why it's those 2, if I'm honest. Had good seasons, definitely good seasons. You know what I'm going to say? Ezri Konsa's been robbed. I saw some stats. No player in Europe's top 5 leagues made more blocks than Konsa this season. He was in the top 10 players for headed clearances, tackles. He's been fantastic this season. So I think he's really, really harshly missed out there. But I do think that those 2 that have been called up probably won't go. I imagine that the defenders that will get dropped will be Godfrey, White, and then I would probably personally drop 2 of the right backs.
Wow.
You don't need 4 right backs. I know we've got a lot of good right backs. We've got probably enough right backs that haven't made the squad that would make most other international squads right now. But you don't need 4. Walker, like Southgate said it himself the other day, that the right backs are versatile and can play different positions. Walker can play in the back 3 if he goes with that. Trent can play wing back or full back, and he mentioned him playing centre midfield, but that's not going to happen.
Not a chance.
It was kind of a shot in the dark, really. Trippier can play on both sides, but you don't really need him to play left back when the form of Chilwell and Shaw is so good. And then Reece James obviously has played as the right side of a back 3 as well, which has been really interesting. So I think for me, I would leave Trent at home, and I would probably... I've said I'd leave Trippier, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'd leave someone out of the forward line or midfield instead, because he's had such a good season, Trippier. Yeah. And I think there is a lot to be said for he's achieved something with England. I know England only finished 4th at the World Cup, but he got a goal in a semi-final, and he was part of that camp, and was such a big player that I do think you want to take that good feeling forward as much as possible. And there is a lot of new players in there, a lot of players that have missed out from the last tournament as well. Eric Dyer's not made the squad, for example, and he was a key player in the World Cup. So maybe Trippier gets in. It depends on whether we have the room to leave someone else elsewhere in the squad. So I would definitely be leaving out Ramsdale, Trent, White, and Godfrey, and then potentially Trippier, I guess.
Are you actually saying that Trent's going to miss the cut for you? Because I know we've spoken in depth about this in a few pods back, how the stacked level of right backs we've got in the England setup is meaning that players like Wan-Bissaka, for example, are missing out.
Yeah.
And you're saying Trent, even on recent form, should still miss out?
Yeah, I wouldn't take him personally, because he's a fantastic footballer on his day, but I think you have to rely on a lot falling in place for Trent to be a success for England. He's not gonna have the license to get forward like he has at Liverpool a lot of the times. We're not going to be quite as on the front foot in a lot of games, maybe through the group stage, but then you never know later on. And defensively, he's not solid enough. He's our worst defensive right back out of that list quite comfortably. And I wouldn't want to bank on that. When Southgate talks about the versatility of the right backs, that brings something to the squad. It really does. Trent's the only one without that, really. It's nothing really against him, but he doesn't really cover any other positions. So if you are thinking like that and being methodical about it, I'd leave him out for that reason too. Plus, he's still really young. His time will come. When Walker and Trippier move on and don't play for the international side anymore, then we're very, very fortunate to have James and Trent at a young age competing for caps. I haven't seen enough of Trent in an England shirt yet to think, he's got to go. He's got to start. He's had some good form in the last month or so, but has had a very inconsistent season that would make me worry about him. And we're talking about Reece James could still win a Champions League. Kyle Walker just won the Premier League. Kieran Trippier just won La Liga. Liverpool have had an indifferent season, and that's putting it politely. So I don't really think Trent's in the right space for it. Maybe you'd say he has a point to prove to Southgate, so he would be very driven. But I just think there's too much in favour of the other three to make him the choice. And you can't take 4 right backs. It's too much.
That's
so
fair
I would leave Trent.
Okay. Well, we mentioned Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I mean, I would kind of say that this is probably the end of his England international career before it's even started, because he's been overlooked once again. And if he's not getting in a 33-man provisional squad, he's never going to get in a squad for Gareth Southgate, is he? So that's a shame. But that begs the question, Dave, out of those right backs, would you consider many of them defensive right backs? Do any of them do the same kind of job that Wan-Bissaka does? And are there any we can sort of flex between an attacking approach and a defensive approach going into a tournament like this?
I think the best defensive right back's not in the squad, and that is Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah.
He does have lapses in concentration at times, and he's been at fault for a few goals for us this season where he's just switched off at the back post and attackers have peeled in behind and scored headers and at the back post against United. So he has got a little bit to work on. I did see something actually that he's actually been more productive going forward than the likes of Reece James and I think a couple of other big name fullbacks as well in the league. So I think this myth that he's not particularly productive at right back is, I agree he's got a lot to improve on going forward, and he does have these games where a lot doesn't go right for him. But I do think he deserves to be in that squad. I'd have him in there instead of Trippier, because I don't feel like Trippier offers anything else that Reece James and Trent Alexander-Arnold, don't. I think he's better defensively than Trent, but going forward, probably not. So for me, I agree. I think probably Trippier does miss out.
Okay. Yeah, it's a difficult one to cut the right backs, especially. But I think in the other positions, are you in agreement with Myles that Godfrey and White are probably only there for experience, maybe, and probably wouldn't make the cuts for the final team?
Yeah, I think it's a bit bizarre, really, that he's thrown them into that provisional squad and they've not had any experience with England. in these past few, the perfect time to give them that opportunity and experience was in some of these dead rubbers against some of these smaller nation teams. In October and November, when it's a bit odd to me, really. Just
to be fair though,
it's big pressure as well. You've got to say.
He's only doing that to see if Maguire's not fit. If Maguire is really not fit enough to go, then maybe one of the two does sneak in. He's got to have that option there, I suppose. And particularly if you think about England want to start training very, very soon. And even if Maguire is fit, the players that are still in the European Cup finals from Chelsea, City and United are missing. So he does need that extra kind of cover just for training sessions more than anything to aid. So I don't think it's a bad call to take them. It's better than taking Walcott to a World Cup, for example. I don't mind them getting called up to a training camp. That's fine. But I do think it should have been Konsa instead.
Well, you were saying about players that have missed out. Konsa's obviously one that's had a great season. And he would have been benefiting, I think, more, and the squad would have benefited more from having him there for these provisional training sessions. But I would also argue Tomori ahead of Connor Cody. Connor Cody's had a tough season with Wolves, And I also think Tyrone Mings is probably lucky to be there ahead of Konsa as well, if you were going to pick one of the two, So
if you can take one of the three out of Cody, Godfrey, and White, which one do you think? Because Cody's Wolves have been terrible towards the end of the season. Well, arguably the second half of the season, they've been all over the place. Conceded goals, which they've been known for not conceding goals and being defensively sure. So who do you take out of those three?
Konsa. No, joking.
I think White's had a better season for me. I think he's unlucky to not have had recognition before. Personally, but Tomori's just had a brilliant season with Milan, really, and his stats have been pretty solid. So Tomori's lucky as well. But centre back's not a strength of the team necessarily. We said this with even the first choice starters. Stones and Maguire are still a bit of a liability, and there's question marks against them. I think we needed a different kind of centre back option other than those two, and I feel like the likes of White and Godfrey would present that definitely. I think he's thinking also in terms of playing as a back three in some games. And I know there's experience there for that. And I think that's also why Kyle Walker kind of should make the final cut too, because he's been there in 2018. So defensively, I mean, it's not a massive issue. We're not stacked at centre back anyway. So I don't think it matters which two you put there necessarily. There's very small differences between them. But I do think that he could have picked other players without caps, for example, who we've mentioned, that would have benefited more from this kind of experience, definitely.
Just quickly on that, though, I think this could be a really massive opportunity for Mings. I've had a few people say to me as a Villa fan, are you not surprised it's Konsa over Mings? And actually, I'm not. I love Ezri Konsa. I think he's absolutely fantastic. But I think Mings brings something massive to an international team and something that will be really valuable. There are a few things. One, he is such a leader on the pitch.
Yeah.
He's had the captain's armband for a lot of this season because Grealish has been out. But even before then, without fans, I don't watch the fan noise coverage. It does my head in. I like watching it quiet. And all you can hear is Mings barking. He gets that defence in shape. And you're looking at a back three that's kept the third most clean sheets in the league this season. All four of them are English, by the way. So any of them could have got in, really. But I think Mings is in there because he has that leadership quality. He's been with the camp for a little while now. And also, he's left-footed.
Yeah.
And I do think that plays a massive part. I think particularly if he's looking to play a back three, Mings will be the left-sided centre-back. But if Maguire doesn't make the first few games, I think Mings will start regardless, even if it's a back four. And that could be a huge opportunity for him. And I would... I know Mings has had a few moments where he's made a few mistakes, but my word, without him in that Villa side this season, he has saved Villa a lot more often than he's put them in damage, I would say. And he's organised that defence and marshalled it so well. And he'll do the same going up the pitch as well. There are a few times where all of a sudden Mings has ended up in the left-back position, right down the wing, putting a cross into the box. So you think, where did he come from? But he likes to take a game on. And that works internationally. I think he's a good shout.
Okay, fair enough. Well, defence is, I think, mostly a straightforward pick. There's a few there that we could, at centre-back, argue should or shouldn't be there. But going through to midfield, it becomes a little bit more complicated. So Jude Bellingham, Jordan Henderson, Jesse Lingard, Mason Mount, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice, James Ward-Prowse. They're the midfielders. Dave, what do you make of those? Who's lucky to be there? Who's unlucky to have missed out? What's your thoughts?
I think Lingard's the one that will miss out, and I think mainly because we're so short in midfield in quality, not just depth, that I think that he will be the only one that's dropped out of their names. I think the rest of them will go. So it's hard, isn't it? Because discussing names that, who we think could have gone, it's hard to even think of many midfielders.
Yeah, well, we're saying this, weren't we? We were thinking back to sort of the likes of when Harry Winks was like a squad member and he was considered like the future of the England team. That seems kind of unthinkable now, doesn't it? Harry Winks getting anywhere close. Eric Dyer as well has obviously missed out, and rightly so. Tottenham have had a terrible season.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm surprised to see Jordan Henderson's name there because his minutes in football this season have been limited, and he's played a lot of centre back as well, which is going to have an effect on his game in midfield, I think, isn't it? Despite all his experience. So I'm really surprised to see him there. Absolutely thrilled to see Bellingham there. And I love James Ward-Prowse for what he offers as well. So for me, they're brilliant additions. I do think Lingard will miss out. I think there's a lot of players in attacking areas who will be there ahead of him. And rightly so. I think he's kind of limited as a footballer and he tailed off towards the end of the season. So I think Lingard for me is the one that's in danger. What I will say, Mason Mount should be a starter now. And that for me is a big turnaround in opinion. He's won me over. I think he's become undroppable for club and country. Myles, you want to chime in on this one? What's your opinion on the midfield setup and who he's picked for the provisional squad?
I agree with what you were just saying about Mount as well. I've said this. He's massively won me over this season. I mean, he probably didn't. He's won a lot of people over, and people who've been watching him very closely will say, idiots, it's about time. So when I say he's won me over, I can't say I was close enough to him. I think he suffered a lot from bad press for a while. He was kind of teacher's pet under Frank Lampard for a while, and that was what he was branded as. Then he was getting criticised for not being Jack Grealish, basically, which wasn't really his fault, I guess. I mean, I'm probably guilty of that too. But he's got to start for me. He's an absolutely fantastic footballer. It's really, really nice to watch him play. That midfield is the trickiest part because it's so short.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I feel like this is so telling of where football has gone over the last few years. But when you used to look at an England squad for World Cups or Euros, the squad would maybe have 4 or 5 forwards in it, max.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at maybe only taking 5 midfielders. That's not very many. That worries me. I wouldn't take Henderson because he's not played football for a very long time and he's not played in midfield for even longer. So that would really worry me. I don't think he'll be sharp enough. And you really need to hit the ground running in a tournament. The Euros will be over before you know it. And we're already talking about risking taking Maguire when he's holding an injury. Declan Rice has only recently come back from an injury. Do you then want to take another player like that as well? And If Henderson had been playing the last few games of the season in midfield and looked quite solid, then you take him because of his experience with England. And I know people always talk about how much he offers as a leader, but I don't think you can accommodate that, which makes me think that maybe Lingard might go purely because he's been there before and he does offer more depth in midfield. I know it's not necessarily his most favoured area to play and he tends to play a bit further forward. And really, you look at it and think, well, why is Lingard classed as a midfielder if maybe Foden is a forward? There's not a great deal between them in that sort of sense. So maybe he will miss out just because there are players ahead of him. But to offer us depth, I wouldn't be that mad at Lingard going. When I said about getting Trippier in the squad, for me, it's Trippier or Lingard that go. And I know that's a weird comparison. It's nothing to do with their playing styles. It's just on what options you want to be able to have. And if you don't take Henderson, then I think you have to take Lingard just to pad that midfield out a bit. Although saying that, like I said, you've got Grealish in there and Foden in there, who both could comfortably drop back into a midfield. Grealish started as a number 8. And then kind of pushed to a number 10 and then played left wing out of necessity. I think he does his best work on the left wing and as a number 10, but he could comfortably drop into midfield if we needed him to. So,
well, that's if you don't mind me interrupting, that's not the question I was going to ask you, really. You've seen a lot of Jack Grealish this season when he's played, so you know his best positions and where he could contribute. Would you play him in the midfield? Because I think they've got him down as like a forward player on the squad list, but can you see him as part of a midfield 3 instead?
I don't think that will happen, if I'm honest, because if everyone's fit, I think the midfield will probably be between Rice, Mount, Bellingham, and maybe Phillips, depending on what the game is. Yeah. So if we're trying to be on the front foot, it'll be Rice, Bellingham, and Mount. And if we're trying to be a bit more reserved, then it'd be Rice, Phillips and Mount, I think. So I don't think they'll need Grealish to play in the midfield, but I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind seeing him as a number 10, definitely. I think the best thing to do is really take advantage of this 5 subs. I think we're really fortunate to have the kind of varied attacking talent that we've got. And I think if we can balance that right and manipulate that right, that could be really successful. If you are a defender and you are dealing with the different prospects that all of our attacking players offer, whether that be Foden, Sterling, Sancho, Grealish, Rashford, Greenwood, and you can swap them wings mid-game and substitute them frequently, that's got to be something we can exploit, because that's where our strength is. Our strength is in those wide areas. So I would probably leave Grealish on the left. Also, Grealish works so well with a fullback, because anytime Grealish has the ball, it gravitates 3 players towards him straight away. And Target has had such a good season for Villa, partly because his attacking outlet has been great in terms of he can drift to that left-hand side. And really often he finds himself in space because too many men are occupied. Foden will do the same job, definitely, if you play him on that left. But they could rotate between number 10 and left wing. I probably wouldn't play Grealish in midfield, but he definitely could comfortably.
So you're putting Bellingham as a starter, really, and if we're playing on the front foot, that would be an interesting sort of turnaround for Southgate if he did that. I don't think he'd be brave enough to play a 17-year-old from the start. So I think he'll go for Phillips and Rice as a starting 2, a double pivot, if you like. So sadly, I think he'll be cautious more than outgoing, especially against Croatia, because I think he'll play that very safely in the first game. But Dave, in the midfield, what's your thoughts on that? Are you echoing Myles's opinion that potentially that will be the starting 3, and who would miss the cut for you?
Yeah, I agree with Myles in terms of it's going to depend very much on the opponent that we're playing. To be honest, I've watched that Rice and Phillips partnership, and it is so dull sometimes. On the occasions that we have seen it, it's just not pretty to watch. So I'm just hoping it will be Rice, because he is the better player of the 2. Can I see the only problem I can see with Grealish is it looks like we're going to be trying to shoehorn so many talented players into these forward areas and the attacking midfield areas. You just got to think that you've still got Sterling, Rashford, who can operate off that left. Obviously, Kane's going to be playing anyway. That's a no-brainer. And then obviously in your right wing, you've got potentially Foden, Sancho. So it's all up for grabs, really. It's really intriguing to think who's actually going to make this starting 11. I do think what Southgate does like, he does like the runs that obviously the wingers do make. Obviously, Sterling off of the ball is brilliant, making space for himself in between the lines. He makes them channel runs as well. And if we've got the likes of, we like to play them diagonal balls, and he's brilliant at operating in those areas. I do think he does like Sterling. I think Sterling will still start, personally. I think potentially Rashford might be on the bench. And it wouldn't surprise me if Grealish was as well. But I do really like Grealish, and I want us to be able to accommodate him in this team somewhere, because I feel like he does just offer us something different.
I think it's going to be interesting to see who plays to the left of Harry Kane, because obviously Grealish is an option there. We've seen him play wide left a few times. Rashford normally holds that position down for United, and I think if Luke Shaw's starting at left back, that might be an interesting partnership down the left. However, I think Phil Foden will probably get the nod based on form, and he's played there for City to quite dangerous effect. I mean, were you talking about Sterling as a left or right-sided player in this instance, Dave?
On the left. He always operates, doesn't he? Yeah. I think what it will be, which I'm really encouraged about, actually, the players that we are coming through, the younger ones now, Mason Mount, Phil Foden, or Raheem Sterling, Rashford, they're all really good at pressing high. So I think that's something we'll be actually really strong at doing, and kind of recovering the ball higher up the field. And we've got the pace then to expose defences, and when we want to be, we can pass the ball quickly. It's just not always kind of unfolded that way under Southgate at times. It has been a little bit slow and ponderous. So I'm just hoping that that will be the case.
Well, I think the options on the front line are quite frightening, really, aren't they? So, Myles, what were you going to say about that?
I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is tournaments are intense and football comes around quickly. So there's nothing wrong with rotating your wingers even. I think how many times the Croatia game, for example, everyone said England looked tired. Well, we've got no excuse for that this time. You can take 26 players and the attacking options we've got mean that we can rotate really well. And I think there are almost direct comparisons as well. Foden and Grealish, they are different players, but in terms of the kind of winger that they are, they're quite similar. Yeah. Sterling and Sancho are quite similar in many ways. They exploit pace quite a lot. So I think you could pair them up. Grealish and Sancho play a game. Foden and Sterling play a game. I'll be honest, I don't think Rashford will get many minutes. And if he does, it might be more down the middle. But he'll go, definitely Rashford will go. But I don't think Rashford will start for England.
We'll go through the forwards then and just see what options that Southgate's got for the final selection. So Calvert-Lewin, Foden, Grealish, Greenwood, Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Saka, Sancho, Sterling and Ollie Watkins. So it's quite heavy, quite top heavy, isn't it? So Dave, who's missing the cut there for you? Because there's a few definite people that you're going to take, but there's a few that I didn't expect to see, to be fair, in a shortlist. So Saka's not really been included much in recent squads, has he? He's not really played many minutes under Southgate. Greenwood even is a surprise for me, because although he's been in good form, Southgate's never really sort of trusted him in the England first team squad, basically the seniors. So who's missing the final cut for you, Dave, out of the forwards?
I think it's a really tough choice, isn't it? You know, you've got to give credit to all of those players because they've all had brilliant seasons. But I feel as though Saka will miss the cut. And I feel like Watkins might. The only reason for that, between him and Calvert-Lewin, I feel as though Calvert-Lewin probably doesn't have quite as much to his game as Watkins did. I feel like Watkins links up better, play, is better, is slicker through the channels and linking play together. I feel as though Calvert-Lewin, if something happens to Kane, I feel like he will be sort of like the target man in the middle.
He's very similar to Kane in a lot of respects, isn't he? He's almost like a direct replacement for Harry Kane in terms of style. Not quite as creative as Kane.
No,
definitely that kind of forward.
We're talking about levels lower than Kane, you know. But I just feel like in terms of that kind of structure of a play, I feel like it's him. So I feel like it will be Watkins and Saka, because Southgate did name drop. Well, he spoke about Greenwood at his press conference yesterday when he obviously revealed the squad, and he did say when we initially selected him for that first squad, obviously, which him and Foden, you know, went walkabouts basically. He said that he selected him for his finishing, and that.
Right, so you're thinking he's going to be playing as a forward now?
That tells me that he's in the squad because he offers something different, and I feel like he is the player that you're gonna. If you want somebody to come on, don't get me wrong, he's not going to start games, is he? It's in that squad, in that team, he's not going to start games. If you need a goal, and if we need somebody fresh off the bench, and he's done it for United this season, has come off and scored, that's what you want. And I feel like how he spoke about it, I feel like he's already kind of sure that he wants to take him as one of his kind of wild card picks.
Okay, Myles, are you smiling? I don't know if that means you're in agreement or not. What's your thoughts?
I think it's funny that I think we'd all probably say that the three that you're looking at in terms of two of them will miss out and one will stay are probably Greenwood, Saka and Watkins. Dave, the Man United fan, would leave Watkins and Saka and take Greenwood. I would leave Greenwood and Saka and take Watkins as a Villa fan. Take that out of it, I think the reason I would take Watkins over Greenwood, for example, is whether everyone always talks about, later on in his career, Greenwood will be a number 9 because his finishing is so good. But he doesn't play there now. He plays as a right-sided forward. And when we just talked about the wealth of talent that we've got in those wide areas, not one of us mentioned Greenwood until we were talking about who misses out. And I think that says everything you need to know. He's a great footballer. He is an incredibly good finisher of the ball as well. But unfortunately, he's not got enough to his game yet in terms of his intelligence of how to play football, in terms of knowing when to take that shot, when to move the ball on, how to hold the ball up. And you need that in an international capacity. You cannot be relying on a wild card. And I think Watkins, for me, is a much safer option, because even if you were talking about if Kane gets injured, then you play Calvert-Lewin. I think the other thing that Watkins does so well, and that I would put him in there for, is if we end up against a Belgium or a Spain or a Germany in a later round in the tournament, and we somehow find ourselves 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, put Watkins up front then, because he will chase the ball down constantly. He has the energy to press. He can hold that ball up. There have been times this season, particularly when Grealish was out, where he was a very isolated figure up front, but still performed incredibly because of that work rate, because of his intelligence and knowing how to hold the ball, when to move it on, okay? He's not a selfish player either. There are times where maybe I'd like him to be a bit more selfish even. He's a great finisher of the ball. His positioning is incredible. He knows the areas to put him in. And if he's getting good service, he'll get good goals. I think Villa's downfall this season at times has been we have lacked creativity without Grealish in there. And that really shows. When Watkins was playing, I know it's a different level, but when Watkins was playing for Brentford and he scored 25 goals from within the box, that's the kind of football that England will play. They'll put the ball in the box. And I think that says a lot about our selection generally. I was going to say earlier, and I think I've said it before, the other reason that you look at Grealish and why Calvert-Lewin is such a good selection even is because this season Grealish missed nearly 3 months. He's still the most foul player in the league. So if you're going to get set pieces that regularly, you need a Watkins, you need a Calvert-Lewin, and you need Kane. And we'll do those things. England are good from set pieces. We saw that the last World Cup. For me, as much as I like Greenwood, he's not as good as the other wide players are. He's a better finisher, but that's all. And I think we need more around it. I don't think Greenwood will go. Okay. I think it'll be Greenwood and Sam that miss out.
Bit of a club disagreement here between Villa and United. Clearly, we knew that would be the case. But I think it is a toss-up between the two over who misses. However, saying that, it would be a better story for Watkins to get in the squad now because of where he's come from and where he's got to. And like you say, Greenwood's going to get his chance, isn't he, for years to come. So definitely. I don't think Greenwood would be too devastated to miss out. I think he's lucky to be in the 33, to be fair. And I think he'd be grateful for that. He's quite a humble guy. So we'll see. Final question before we wrap up, guys. We've been through the squad fairly meticulously. What kind of approach do you think Gareth Southgate is going to take? Because he's picked two holding midfielders and he's picked Jordan Henderson, who can do either a number 8 or a sort of a number 4 role. So is he going to play it conservatively for you? And are you worried about that potentially stifling the forwards? What's your thoughts? I'll start with you, Dave. What sort of approach are England going to take or likely to take against someone like Croatia, for example?
Someone like Croatia now, it's a very different Croatia to what we faced 2 years ago. You know, the players are older, so we should be beating them comfortably, in my opinion. A team like that now. We're not just a young team, but we're a team with energy. We're actually, if you think about it, I feel as though as a team now, because of that youthfulness, I think there will be I don't think there'll be any fear in those players, and I think that's what you want sometimes. You just want teams to attack, and I feel like in those players, which I mentioned earlier, Foden, Mount, you've got Sterling. That I think in terms of that particular team, we will look to try and win the ball up high. And the good thing is that all of their teams do. They like to press high, and I feel like that will only help us as a bunch of players. I do feel as though we will look to try and play quickly once we do receive the ball in those areas. I feel like as though, pains me to say, but I do feel like it will probably play with Phillips and Rice in the majority of the game. I think that's just how it will be, and we'll rely on those players that we have further up the field to create some kind of brilliance. But obviously, like you say, Myles, we've got players that can win a lot of fouls. We've seen the likes of Grealish who does play. I think we will rely on set pieces again. So we've got players who are brilliant at it. And even if Maguire isn't brilliant from set pieces for United, from whenever he plays for England, he always seems to goal. I think it will be better, but I'm still slightly unsure as to whether it's going to be as good as we hope.
Yeah, I feel like you're right. I think he'll start with Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice, which I think I'm worried will make the transition to attack and the counter-attack especially a lot slower because we've got so many creative players. I wish he would just take advantage of that. Anyway, I'll go on to you, Myles, just to wrap up. What kind of effect do you think having so many players in European finals is going to have on fatigue? And do you think that will reflect in the first team he picks for the first game? Do you think he'll leave a lot of those European finalists out of the team?
I don't think he can afford to with some of them. Although you say that, how many of them are in the starting 11 really? I think probably Stones and Maguire, but we don't know if Maguire is going to be fit. And then Shaw and Chilwell. Short of that, then maybe Sterling, Foden. But even that, we're talking about the options we've got there. So it's not the biggest worry. The defence is the only area that you'd worry about. But to be honest, with the season everyone's had, fatigue's going to be a thing. This has been the most truncated season that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And football has not stopped. So players will be conditioned towards that a little bit, and we get the extra 3 men in the squad. So I'm not sure. I hope it doesn't take too much of an effect, but we need to hit the ground running. The last thing you want to see in a tournament is your team start slow, because all of a sudden, then it's an uphill battle. We saw it the last 2 World Cups, for example. We won that first game just about, and it kick-started something. The World Cup before, we lost it, went out of the group, because all of a sudden you think, I have to win my next 2 games now, whereas you kind of get the free hit of the first game if you get the win. So I think we need to be mindful of that we don't fall behind anyone, because this is a favourable group. England should get out of this group quite comfortably. The last thing you want to see is us not take advantage of that. I think Southgate's approach is going to be really interesting. When you talk about the midfield and the fact that he's taken 2 defensive midfielders, did he have a choice? I think you look at the midfielders that we've relied on over the last few years, and they've all fallen off so much that, like you said, who's knocking on that door? Who's fighting to get in this squad in midfield that's not on there? We've lost the likes of Winks, Dele Alli, and Eric Dyer from Spurs, who have all had pretty awful seasons by their own reckoning. Who?
Loftus-Cheek.
Loftus-Cheek. Yeah, you forget that. Do you know what? The fact that I went who is exactly right. Forgot that he was in the last squad. We don't really have any other options. So yeah, he's taken Rice and Phillips and Henderson, but what else do you? If you're thinking, I better take a 40% fit Jordan Henderson because I'd rather that than take Eric Dyer, I probably wouldn't argue. Maybe Joe Willock could have gone.
You love Joe Willock, don't you?
No, I don't really think Willock could have gone. I'm not saying Willock should have gone, but he's probably the next option. Like, that's the level that we dropped there. Oxlade Chamberlain, maybe you look at again, but he didn't play football. Get Milner back. Get Milner to come play.
Get Gareth Barry back in.
One thing I just really want to quickly say with my bias is, do you know how proud it makes me seeing 3 Villa players in this squad and thinking, should there have been a 4th? Only United and City have got more players in the squad than Villa. That's what a season that's been for Villa. And honestly, I look at that, I see Mings, see Grealish and Watkins, and the smile when I read that and thinking, could have been Concert too. That's great.
Maybe Southgate's not fond of Villa, Miles. Maybe that's why it took so long for Grealish to get into the team, and now he's fobbed off Concert as well.
That was the argument for a long time, and he was my favourite Villa player when I was a kid, so that always made me sad to think he was betraying us. But I think even he can't deny the quality of the English players we brought in this year, definitely.
No, it's a big. I think it's a big thumbs up to what Villa are doing, isn't it?
Well done, Dean Smith.
Dean Smith is one of the most underrated English managers in the game, I think. That's probably a pod for another time. What kind of managers are going to take over Gareth Southgate when he eventually leaves? I think Smith should be up there in the conversation.
Leave Smith alone. No.
You'd let him go for England, surely.
No, never.
That's like a big seal of approval, though, for the work he's done.
Don't care. He's taken us to the Champions League at some point. Give it
what
3
about
years.
job swap? Southgate for Smith?
No. Wouldn't take it. No. I saw Southgate at Middlesbrough. Sack that.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I get it.
Just a quick one. On the back of the last podcast, you were talking about Wolves and the next manager. Surprise, surprise, might be another Portuguese manager.
Yeah. It had to be, didn't it?
Conte has left.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, big news. Bit of a left field move, that one, wasn't it? Who saw that
Daniel Levy's like this.
No, apparently
he can't attract him.
Apparently there's rumours they're going to sell a big player, Inter. It sounds like it might be Lukaku. But
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Back to Chelsea, maybe? Who knows?
Or Lautaro, maybe?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Madrid have been sniffing around him for a long time. But again, could they afford the fee that he commands? You know, it's a big question mark over them at the minute.
And just quickly, Roberto Martinez being linked with the Spurs job. Why does that guy seem to always just be able to attract? Like he fails upwards, Martinez. Like
He's doing all right.
He got Wigan relegated, took the Everton job, was rubbish there, got the Belgium national job. Golden generation doesn't win anything with him. All right, give him to Spurs. How is that happening?
Well, you're saying that like Spurs is a step up. Come on, man. Not at the minute.
But still, it's too much for Martinez.
Anyway, on that note, I'm going to bid you farewell. On the next pod, we're going to have loads to talk about because the European finals will have happened. Proper pumped for this. And
Dave
then
will be
we roll on
crying.
the Euros. Dave crying, you reckon?
Yeah. Nah, you'll be all right.
You'll be all right.
Do the job.
But no, plenty of football to talk through. And you guys, I'll see you next time. Hopefully joined by
Nice
John
one.
as well. But thanks for your time, guys. See you soon. And thanks
Good
for
day,
watching.
guys.
Cheers.